Hi everyone. I'm going to talk a little bit. I know most of my stuff is about CPS, but this is a little bit kind of near and dear to me and my knowledge and my backstory of children with special needs. As those who know who Ryan Anderson is, the former husband of Gypsy Rose Blanchard. Now, he has been making a living for several years off of social media and documentaries, TV shows, stuff like that. Almost like a sidekick to her. Um, but a, a lot of the calls that he had when he was dating and married Gypsy have been released to FOIAs and sunshine laws out of that state that she was incarcerated in. For some crazy reason, he thinks it's illegal and the haters are after him and everything. But what it is you have to shine light to evil. Evil can't stay hidden in the darkness to just pounce upon us. It's appalling that Gypsy Rose is out of jail and living her best life ever, as she claims. But what I want to talk about is a couple of things. First, I'm going to go over TikTok and how he's still on it. And then the second one I want to go over is what laws may be there to what laws may be there that may pertain to some crimes that he may have participated in while on these calls with Gypsy. All right, first I want to talk about TikTok. Now, I don't do TikTok. I don't know anything about TikTok, but a lot of my YouTube I watch are like runs or recaps or whatever of TikTok lives that TikTok content creators have done. So one of the things I want to say is, from what I understand, is TikTok is against saying certain words like you have to say schmurder or grape, PD3O or P3DO, PDF file, stuff like that, to kind of get away with some of their things. One thing I notice in a lot of clips I see of Ryan Anderson is he's always flipping the bird. And from what I've researched, that's a no-no. Um, but I've seen him do it dozens of times. Why is he allowed to? Second of all, his calls are coming out that shine a light that he very well could have either intentionally or accidentally or I don't want to say accidentally, but thinking by the wrong head, um, put some children in some harm's way. So, and then also from what I understand, watching It's Getting Weird, I think that's her podcast, um, on YouTube. And I just want to say that everything I'm talking about, I mean, fair use, and this is for commentary, education, and stuff like that. But one thing I want to, you know, I've seen is like he's doing like games and raffles and stuff that aren't allowed. And he and his ex go after content creators. Now, I don't know if people have lost and never gotten their TikTok back. But it's just specifically talking about TikTok because that's where he does his lives. And if you have lost your TikTok account for way less than what he does, and if they're keeping him on and active because it's financially a windfall for them, but for others it's not, and they've cut off smaller creators or users or something like that, then then I don't know. Personally, I think I would get a group of people that have been harmed or punished or demonetized or something for far less. I think I would threaten a class action lawsuit. Because what it seems like they're doing is selective enforcement. Now, I know sometimes selective enforcements are more used in like HOAs or apartment complexes where, rules for thee, but not for thee kind of thing. Where you have your favorites and they can break all the laws, but then you have your not favorites and they can't break any laws and they get fines and stuff like that. Um, yeah, you cannot selectively enforce laws and rules and stuff like that. Also, like an employer can't have a favoritism and go against policy. So remember, once there's written policy or laws or statutes, you you can't really have favoritism. And I've done a little bit of uh research on yeah, sure. If um if you know and like in a workplace, and it's to some people, definitely for Ryan, that um TikTok is their job, and some people it's their only job. For Ryan, it's his only job. But if it can be based on discrimination, harassment, retaliation, now TikTok may not be retaliating those ways, but maybe they are. I mean, you're letting a racist person be online, and like he sits there and screams, "I'm not a rapist." He is racist. Um, and then he even did a hood, of a Klan depiction over his lamp, fully in his live. Why is he still on? I think people really need to like talk to some lawyers. I would threaten a class action lawsuit and say we'll drop our case if you get rid of him. All right, the second thing I want to go over, doing my legal research, which is what I'm pretty good at, I want to go over 47 U.S. Code 223, which is obscene or harassing telephone calls. Um, and for the District of Columbia or interstate communications or foreign communications, but let's just go interstate. Gypsy Rose was in Missouri. Ryan was in Louisiana. So prohibited acts generally, whoever. So part A, one, in interstate or foreign communications. All right, so this is interstate. By means of telecommunications device knowingly makes, create, or solicits and initiates the transmission of any comment, request, suggestion, proposal, image, or other communication which is obscene or child pornography with intent to abuse, threaten, or harass another person. Um, Also, by means of telecommunication device knowingly makes, creates, solicits, initiates the transmission of any comment, request, suggestion, proposal, image, or other communication which is obscene or child pornography, knowing that the recipient of the communication is under 18 years of age, regardless of whether the maker of such communication placed the call or initiated the communication. So here in the calls, you have Ryan Anderson is a um, teacher of special education students, which is generally like I've had special education children. So you have children that are nonverbal, you have children that are physically handicapped, visually, hearing handicapped, and sometimes you only have one teacher in there. Say one calls out sick, can't get a replacement. Say one had to go to the whatever. Sometimes you just have one student, so they keep it kind of like a enclosed, um, all built in with like sometimes they have little kitchenettes. Sometimes they have most of the time they have a bathroom because it's just easier when you have disabled children not to just take them all down the hall. Um, Now, it really depends on the debt ratio of teacher to students, how much need they have for constant supervision. Um, but I digress. Let's just assume that he was in a classroom that had a bathroom. Just think of like a hospital room or a hotel room where you've got a bathroom right off side of your bed or something. So from what it seems and what it appears is he left his students alone to have a sex conversation in this shared student bathroom to whack one off uh, while the phone is on speaker. So just think about it, right? He's self-pleasuring himself with both of his hands. So on his big old fat belly, he's got his phone to listen to Gypsy Rose egg him sexually on. Now, Rose knew he was in a classroom with students on speakerphone. So we have the fact that this is like child pornography. This is like pornography in front of children, which is illegal across the board. So, but let's just go by this law. Let's get people to use this law to complain to the state of Missouri, the state of Louisiana, and if you don't think you're getting traction, go straight to Washington, D.C.'s DOJ and FBI and get this investigated because let's see, what's the next part? Make a telephone call or utilize a telecommunication device, whether or not conversation and communication ensues without disclosing his identity and with intent to abuse, threaten, or harass any specific person. Makes a cause a telephone of another repeatedly or continuously to ring. Okay, no, that's not it. Makes repeated telephone calls, and I think this was done more than once. I'm not positive. Knowingly permits any telecommunications facility under his control to be used for any. No, that's not. Won't be it. I did cover a lot of them. I'm not going to read because this thing is literally like 22 pages. And people can look it up. Because once again, it's 47. This is a federal law. 47 U.S. code, or also you can look up 47 U period S period C period 223. I really do believe those who want to have him, Ryan, face Ryan and Gypsy. Gypsy's guilty too, because Gypsy did the talking, and with that talking, she instigated, him doing a lewd act in front of children. Now, maybe the door was closed, but children can also hear. Could have heard her say things if the phone was on speaker and could have heard him, self-pleasuring himself. I really think that people should start there. And because if anything, now I think the most they can get is 2 years in prison with and fines. But the statute of limitations is 5 years on that. I would seriously look into filing those complaints. And I just did a little search. There's probably more laws. Uh, because, you know, did he leave the children alone? I would assume so. I would assume he didn't do that with the teacher in the room. So he left disabled children alone for 5, 10, 20 minutes. That's endangering minors. That's endangering children. I think, um, I think he's going to end up going to jail for this. I really do. What laws is he indicted for? I don't know, but I think he will end up indicted for things. Um, I know he was gone 4 days. I would assume he was uh at a 3 day, 72 hour involuntary hold because he's probably pretty low at this point. I would be when when the phone calls come out and you're holding a 5-year-old child, and I don't care how big the book was. You know what I mean? You know how big a 5-year-old child is, right? So just imagine his head's here. They're almost 4 feet long, and if you're 6 feet, those feet are going to be about maybe, just think if their head's here, you've got almost a foot here, and then you've got about a foot or two from the leg down. Imagine that you're laying on a couch with that child laying beside you. 5-year-olds aren't tiny little. They're not little infants that you hold like this. They're very, 3 to 4 feet tall, long individuals. So his body had to have been in very close proximity to his unit that he was getting knobbed on, right? Is mommy braced on him while she's, um, that's also wrong. That's also wrong. You cannot have sexual or lewd acts done in front of a child. It is illegal. Anyhow, I'm going to wrap this up. I just wanted to kind of talk about that. Talk about this man is P3DO. He want to claim he isn't, whatever. There are so many different ways you can be one. But, he also said he messed with the same kid. He messed with them. What do you mean by you messed with him? How much did the child see of the sexual act? Is it enough to groom them and think it's okay? You know what I mean? Um, 5-year-olds remember stuff. Even if they're in their 20s, they remember stuff. 5 years is a good age to remember a lot of stuff. So listen, here's to hoping that he gets thrown in jail. And he says he's not going to apologize for things he said and things he's done. That's coming out in these calls. Let's see if you do an apology in court after the victim impact statements come out. When parents say, we trusted you with our children, and you ran off to their bathroom, because it's the children's bathroom that the teachers may be able to use, but it's the bathroom for the children. The children are the disabled ones, right? So what gives you the right to pleasure yourself to completion in the toilets and around the toilets, the sinks, or whatever, leaving your gunk around? I mean, and how did you clean up? You're just a disgusting person crying, Anderson, Clanderson, which is perfect, a perfect name for you. Here's to hoping that you go to jail. And the day he's arrested and he's indicted, I think I want to pop a cork of champagne or wine on here and say hallelujah, because that man should go to jail for a while. Here, let's hear your comments about this and see what you all think. But I think, listen, anyone can file a complaint with the DOJ and the FBI. And I think perfectly fits in now that you know that it was in the bathroom with the students and it was on speakerphone and Gypsy was aware of it. They both need to go down for this. Statute of limitations, 5 years. Find out when those phone calls were. I don't know. I have to look it up. I still think it's within those 5 years. Because even if it happened in 2022, which is when I think they got married, and he says, discussions I had with my wife. There's still another year that this can be filed. Just indicted. They just need it, not even filed. He needs to be indicted within 5 years. So here's to hoping. America, let's get rid of pedos. All right? Have a good day. Thanks. Bye.